Tom Brady is one of the greatest athletes in pro sports history. That's a given. Look at his resume. It's a no-brainer that he's the GOAT, right? Well, no. In fact, not even close. Tom Brady is not the GOAT, and he's the most overrated athlete in the entire history of professional sports. Here's why. Second only to Barry McCockiner, I'm probably the biggest Brady hater I know. But it wasn't always that way. Brady used to be my favorite player ever. I used to make all the same arguments and boast his 7 rings alongside his toxic Twitter army. But sitting down and actually looking into his successful career not only convinced me that he's not the GOAT, it forced me to accept that Brady is the most overrated athlete of all time. Just as a preface, ring totals don't mean a thing. In the same way that Eli Manning is not better than Dan Marino, Tom Brady isn't necessarily better at football than Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers just because he has more rings. Another reason rings can't be the way we rank our all-time greatest lists is because rings are a team accomplishment. Football is different from other sports in the sense that there are so many factors that decide the winner and loser of a game, most of said factors being completely out of the quarterback's control. This is why, as I'll expound on later, Tom Brady can throw 3 picks in a playoff game and still have a greater chance of winning than losing. Brady is a system quarterback, and his systems are responsible for his success. His talent is not responsible for his success because he has very little talent. His performance at the Combine was atrocious. He's not a consistent deep ball quarterback, and his IQ isn't as godly as his fans would lead you to believe. Brady has 2 basic systems he's played under in his career, the Belichick system and the super team system. I call it the Belichick system, but whatever you want to call it, let's take a look at Brady's setup in his years at New England. For the majority of the time, Brady has been on a team with a top 5 defense, and for the vast majority of the time, he's had at least a top 10 defense. Nothing says Tom Brady is the GOAT more than his defense carrying him, am I right? In his 20 years spent with the Patriots, the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins combined to average a regular season record of 6-10. So for his entire tenure, Brady got to play in the worst division in the NFL. When you have 6 free wins every year, in the remaining 10 games, all you got to do is go 500 to be in the running for the number 1 seed. Throughout his career, Brady and his team has been caught cheating several times, but this can be straight up ignored when deciding who the GOAT is, because these scandals aren't a big deal. They're just catchy watchwords, you know? Spygate, Deflategate, Headsetgate, the Tuck Rule. Brady celebrating with the refs after they make questionable calls in the Patriots-Jaguars AFC Championship. Brady celebrating with the refs after they make questionable calls in the Bucs-Packers NFC Championship. And then the best part of the Belichick system, the offense, which consists of 90% dinking and dunking, checkdowns, and dump-offs. Because nothing says Tom Brady is the GOAT more than his ability to throw a screen, then stand there and watch his receiver shake a tackle and run 30 yards, am I right? Factoring in Brady's elite defenses, not to mention elite special teams, weak division, cheating scandals, and dink and dunk system offense is not spin doctoring on my part. It's not a stretch or an excuse. These are all facts. And here's another fact. The Belichick system works just as well without Tom Brady. In 2008, with Brady missing the entire season due to injury, backup quarterback Matt Castle thrived in the Belichick system, leading the Patriots to an 11-5 record. Before starting in 2008, Matt Castle had not started a football game since high school. A guy with starting experience equal to a high schooler thrived in the Belichick system. In 2016, when Brady was suspended for cheating, yes, he was cheating, the Patriots with 3 different backup quarterbacks went 3-1 without him. So from 2008 to 2016, the Patriots went 14-6 without Tom Brady. That's a win percentage of 70, not too far below Brady's career win percentage of 76. You might say, but the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl when Matt Castle started. Well, neither did Tom Brady in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2015, 2017, 2018, and 2020. So, I don't know what point you'd be trying to make there. Brady didn't even leave New England because the system failed. In his last season with the Patriots, the Belichick system led Brady to a 12-4 record like usual. They had every opportunity to go and win it all, but their season ended in the wildcard round on a Brady interception. Once he left New England, he went to Tampa and set up his second system, the super team system. The formula for this is very simple. Step 1, build a super team. That's it. In addition to an offense loaded with star receivers Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, Brady brought Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, and Leonard Fournette there with him. And somehow Tampa Bay's defense went from 29th in the league to top 5 in the league upon Brady's arrival. People say Tampa Bay sucked the year before Brady joined them, but that is yet another ignorant take. The Bucs were a 500 team, with several of their losses being one-score games, and they would have won a ton more games if Jameis Winston didn't throw a historically bad 30 interceptions. On a super team like this, what could Brady have done to not win the Super Bowl? He could throw it deep to Godwin or Evans or Gronk or Brown. He could throw his little dink and dunks to Godwin or Evans or Gronk or Brown or Fournette. Or, as we all watched in 2021, Brady could do nothing and let his top 5 defense win the game for him, like they did in the Super Bowl versus Patrick Mahomes. The entire narrative, the whole reason Brady left the Patriots, was to prove he can win without Belichick, without the system. But he did not do that. All he did was prove with even greater force that he can't win anything unless he is surrounded by elite coaching or elite talent or both. Brady's scandal of leaving his team and his fans just to build a super team in Tampa and chase a ring is the NFL equivalent of Kevin Durant joining a 73-win super team with 4 Hall of Famers just to chase a ring. Both are cheap, a slap in the face to the game, and both got Mickey Mouse rings to show for their crimes. If it's true that Brady is as overrated as I say he is, one should expect Brady to have some egregious lowlights in the playoffs. And what do you know, he has a ton of such moments. Tom Brady, who at the time was 67-0 when leading at halftime, led the Ravens at halftime in the 2012 playoffs, but he was a total no-show in the entire second half and ended up getting bounced out of the playoffs 28-13. It's ironic that people have come up with this idea that Brady gets better and more clutch in the playoffs, whereas Peyton Manning is great in the regular season and then chokes in the playoffs. First of all, this narrative is completely backwards. From the regular season to the playoffs, Tom Brady gets worse statistically across the board. Less yards, less touchdowns, more interceptions. But this narrative is ironic because the last 3 times Brady and Manning faced each other in the playoffs, Peyton's team walked off victorious. I guess the Jets, Bills, and Dolphins just didn't prepare Brady enough for his real matchups with Peyton Manning. Brady lost in the Super Bowl to an Eagles team who had to start their backup quarterback. Yes, I know the Eagles put up 41 points. Yes, I know that Brady had 500 pass yards and 3 touchdowns. But guess what else Brady had? He had a gift-wrapped, perfect chance to pull off one of his classic game-winning drives with 2 minutes left in the game. And what did he do? He choked, fumbled, and turned the ball over after a whopping 12-second drive. For all 41 points that the Eagles put up, the fate of the game still ended up being in Brady's hands in crunch time, and Brady blew it. And of course, the lowest of the low, Brady melted down worse than LeBron James in the 2011 finals, twice versus Eli Manning in the Super Bowl. In 2007, the Patriots averaged 37 points per game, but Tom Brady woke up feeling dangerous and put up a whole 14 points in the Super Bowl versus Eli. In 2011, they averaged 32 points per game, only to score half of that versus the Giants in the Super Bowl. Here's some real proof that Tom Brady has nothing to do with his team winning or losing the game. Tom Brady put up 500 yards and 3 touchdowns in a Super Bowl game, and his team lost. Tom Brady put up 0 touchdowns and an interception in a Super Bowl game, and his team won the game. If that doesn't tell you how much of a non-factor Tom Brady is, I don't know what will. These 2 Super Bowls, the former versus the Eagles and the latter against the Rams, prove it. Everything else I've said proves it even more. Tom Brady's individual merit and statistics have nothing to do with the success or failure of his team. But let's look at his individual merit and statistics. In the regular season and playoffs combined, he has over 700 touchdowns and 85,000 pass yards, both by far the most of all time. Surely I can't expose these monstrous stat totals, right? Remember earlier when I said 90% of Brady's offense is dinking and dunking? In order to make this video, I put myself through something 10 times more boring than watching paint dry. I sat down and watched all 700 plus Tom Brady touchdown passes. I thought I was exaggerating at first, just to make a point when I said 90% of Brady's offense is dinking and dunking. But as it turns out, literally 80% of Tom Brady's 700 touchdown passes are dink and dunks, checkdowns, screens, dump offs, or quick slants. 80% of them. I had to sit down and watch all of the touchdowns one by one because there's no stat site that can give you this kind of information. For example, if Brady throws the ball to Danny Amendola behind the line of scrimmage, then Amendola shakes a couple tackles and runs 56 yards for a touchdown, the stat sheet is going to tell you that Tom Brady threw a 56-yard touchdown pass. Everyone can see, given the context of this scenario, that that's a misleading stat. So I'm not telling you that 80% of Tom Brady's touchdown passes are plays shorter than 15 yards, because that's not true. What I am telling you is that 80% of Tom Brady's touchdown passes are plays where Brady only threw the football 15 yards or less. It's my common sense understanding that any decent pro quarterback can make a consistent, accurate pass of 15 yards or less. We'll call these kinds of passes scrub passes. I figure that you have to be really good to consistently throw an accurate pass of 20 to 35 yards, and I figure that you have to be a legendary quarterback to consistently throw an accurate pass of 40 yards or more. So we have scrub passes, 15 yards or less, good passes, 20 to 35 yards, and legendary passes, 40 yards or more. This criteria of a quarterback's ability to pass the football is more than reasonable. It makes perfect sense. Watching all of Brady's touchdown passes, I found that 80% of them are scrub passes, 15% of them are good passes, and 5% of them are legendary passes. Oh, and by the way, 65% of Brady's legendary passes were thrown to Randy Moss and the super team Tampa Bay receivers. This means that on top of the fact that 95% of Brady's touchdown passes are not legendary, most of the ones that are legendary were only achieved when Brady had more help than usual. Let's compare these numbers to Aaron Rodgers. You know Aaron Rodgers, that guy who only has one ring, so there's no way he's better than the godly Tom Brady. Of Rodgers' 494 total touchdowns, 59% of them are scrub passes, 27% of them are good passes, and 14% of them are legendary passes. Think about how insane this is. Brady has far more scrub touchdown passes than Rodgers, whereas Rodgers has a 2-to-1 ratio over Brady in good passes, and he has a 3-to-1 ratio over Brady in legendary passes. But it gets even crazier. Tom Brady has played 130 more games than Aaron Rodgers. 130 games is equal to 7 seasons. 7 years. Even with a 7-year head start, Aaron Rodgers has 31 more total good passes, and he has 24 more total legendary touchdown passes than Tom Brady. Even if we ignore the context of how far the quarterbacks actually threw the ball, you still see in these charts that most of Brady's touchdowns are below 25 yards, whereas Rodgers has a lot under 25 yards, but beyond 25 yards his touchdowns are much more spread out than Brady's. These numbers, these facts, are absolutely unreal, and the vast majority of NFL Nation will never care to see it, because all they care about is 7 rings versus 1 ring. On top of all this, Rodgers' touchdown to interception ratio is 4-to-1 over Brady's 2-to-1. It's 2 times better. Rodgers has the better career passer rating. Rodgers has more NFL league MVPs than Brady, along with a mountain of other records I could list, but I won't because it's not even the topic of this video. Rodgers has had 1 top 5 defense compared to Brady's 10. Rodgers is 0-2 in the overtime coin flip in the playoffs, whereas Brady is 2-0. How much luckier can this rat bastard get? As I'll talk about later, he does get even luckier. That's a mic drop. Don't ever tell me that Tom Brady is better than Aaron Rodgers. But let's look at Brady's passing yards and touchdowns in a more simple way. 710 touchdown passes and 85,000 pass yards. Tom Brady has played 365 games in his 20-year career. Doing the simple math, Brady's stats end up being 2 touchdowns and 230 pass yards per game. 2 touchdowns and 230 pass yards a game? That's not elite. That's a stat line Andy Dalton could roll out of bed and give you. Brady's massive longevity stats are only impressive if you completely ignore the way he got to this point. I do give him the credit he deserves, even if it's only 2 touchdowns per game and 80% of those touchdowns are dink and dunks. Tom Brady's longevity is impressive, and his longevity has made him the far and away leader in all-time touchdowns and passing yards. But looking at these numbers in context, I'm not going to say Brady is the GOAT because of it. Shaquille O'Neal has 6,000 made free throws in his career. So far, Steph Curry only has 3,400. To say that Brady is the GOAT because he has more total touchdowns than anyone else is literally the same thing as saying Shaq is better at free throws than Steph Curry because Shaq has more total free throws made. This kind of brainless argument ignores the percentages per game, which is what really matters. Shaq is a career 50% free throw shooter, whereas Steph Curry is at 91%. Clearly, Steph is the better free throw shooter, and he doesn't need more total free throws for us to know it. In the exact same way, Brady barely averages 2 touchdowns a game in his career, whereas Patrick Mahomes averages almost 3 touchdowns per game. Pat Mahomes is clearly a better, more talented quarterback than Tom Brady, and he doesn't need more total touchdowns for us to know it. This is why Brady is overrated. This is the greatest flaw in Tom Brady's dink and dunk play style. This is why Julian Edelman and Wes Welker are top 5 in the Patriots' all-time receiving yards list, but they're nowhere near the top 5 on New England's all-time yards per reception list. It's why Brady doesn't break records in the fewest games ever like Matthew Stafford, and it's why he doesn't break records in the fewest passes ever like Aaron Rodgers. Even if it's been a huge part of Brady's successful career, this is the weakness of the dink and dunk play style. It exposes Tom Brady for the mediocre, pedestrian role player that he is. And if most people want to be brainwashed by 7 rings and ignore all of these facts, that's not my problem. Tom Brady racking up 700 touchdowns over 20 years doesn't prove that he's talented. He's not talented. It proves that he's an average quarterback who's been playing for a really, really long time, because he only throws 2 touchdowns a game. Remember when I said Brady is a lucky rat bastard in the playoffs? Let's talk more about that. Brady has played the Rams twice in the Super Bowl. Somehow he won them both, despite his stat lines you see here. These stat lines are terrible, but Brady's team found a way to win these games. In the 2002 game, the Patriots defense won the game with a pick 6. In the 2019 game, Julian Edelman was named Super Bowl MVP, not Tom Brady. On top of that, the 2002 game was the tuck rule season, so New England shouldn't have been in the Super Bowl at all. And in the 2019 game, that was the year the refs intentionally screwed the Saints, so the Rams shouldn't have been in the Super Bowl at all. So many asterisks in these Super Bowls. The Super Bowl versus the Seahawks. On the surface, this Super Bowl has an asterisk because Seattle was known for 2 things. Mostly the Legion of Boom, and then Russell Wilson as a distant second. Seattle had Russell Wilson, but the Legion of Boom was in shambles. Richard Sherman was mildly injured, while Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas had serious injuries. Not to mention Aaron Rodgers played the entire 2014 playoffs with a torn calf. If Rodgers was healthy, Seattle wouldn't have even made the Super Bowl, and we would have had a rematch from the regular season between the Packers and the Patriots, a game that was won by Green Bay. But the biggest asterisk on this game is how it ended. Seattle on the 1-yard line with a game-winning touchdown begging to be made. Instead of running a 1-yard touchdown with the best running back in the league, Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson throws it and gets picked off. Tom Brady played 0 role in deciding the winner of this Super Bowl, but most people give him all the credit anyway. That's how lucky he is. The tuck rule game in 2001. What really needs to be said about this? Tom Brady fumbled and lost the game to the Raiders. The refs bailed him out. In recent years, the NFL has actually fixed the tuck rule because it's a garbage rule. Brady is the luckiest role player of all time. The luckiest break of Tom Brady's career has to be the Super Bowl versus Atlanta. Down 28-3 in the second half, all Atlanta needed to do was run the ball every play and kill the game clock. They had 2 top 5 running backs that season in Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman, but they didn't do that. They had undeserving 2016 MVP Matt Ryan keep on throwing the ball in the second half. Atlanta didn't score a single point in the last 27 minutes of the game. Late in the fourth quarter, they were in field goal range twice. Either field goal would have sealed the game, but they choked and botched both drives. Both of Tom Brady's 2-point conversions that ended up tying the game were passes behind the line of scrimmage. His receivers shook tackles or burrowed their way through to the end zone. This is by far the luckiest break any athlete in any sport has ever caught. Tom Brady's pedestrian per-game stats, his lucky fluke wins, and Adam Vinatieri in the defense winning his first 3 Super Bowls for him is more than enough to establish Brady as the most overrated of all time. When you have all of these luxuries that no other athlete comes close to having, there is no need for anything more. But there is more. On top of all of these luxuries, Tom Brady saw it fit to cheat several times in his career to give himself an even higher chance of winning. The New England Patriots recording their opponents' play calls and schemes to give their team an unfair advantage, intentionally deflating footballs under the league-required PSI to make the ball easier for Brady to throw, screwing with teams' coaching headsets in the middle of games, and Tom Brady personally celebrating with the refs in playoff games where the refs make blatant wrong calls that propel Brady's team to victory. I think I speak for all people who have any decency whatsoever when I say that a few game suspensions and fines is not enough. anything less than revoking some Super Bowl rings is no real punishment at all for the system weasel that is Tom Brady. That brings me to my final point of why Tom Brady is not the GOAT. I've saved the best for last. Tom Brady is to the NFL what Robert Horry is to the NBA. If you've ever watched The Odd Couple with Chris Broussard and Rob Parker, you may have heard Rob say this before. And make no mistake, it's not a watchword, it's not a sound bite. This is a fact that is heavily justified. First, let's look at both Brady's and Horry's per game stats compared to the league average of the positions they play. In terms of their per game stats, when we look at Brady compared to all other quarterbacks and Horry compared to all other power forwards, both Brady and Horry prove to be statistically pedestrian. Brady is slightly above average in pass yards and completion percentage. Touchdowns and interceptions are a wash. Horry is slightly below average in points and shooting percentage from 2. Rebounds, assists, and shooting percentage from 3 are a wash. By the numbers, Brady and Horry are both in the middle of the pack in their positions. They're not bums, but they don't excel in their position either. They're average, because their per game stats virtually mirror that of the league's average stats. Both Brady and Horry have 7 championships, Brady with 7 Super Bowls and Horry with 7 NBA Finals respectively. You might say, but Horry played with Hakeem and the Rockets, then he played with the Shaq-Kobe Lakers, then he played with the Tim Duncan Spurs. He's always had great teammates around him, he was just riding their coattails. Brady has had the exact same luxury. In all of his Super Bowl wins, he's had a top 5 defense and the greatest coach of all time. In half of his Super Bowl wins, he's had the greatest tight end of all time or the greatest kicker of all time. And people love to sleep on Brady's wide receivers as if Julian Edelman isn't a Super Bowl MVP. You might say, but Horry didn't always play good in the finals. Brady has the exact same flaw. In the 2001 Super Bowl versus the Rams and the 2018 Super Bowl versus the Rams, Tom Brady threw for 1 touchdown. Both Super Bowls combined. 1 touchdown in both games combined. Not to mention he only had 1 touchdown in the 2008 Super Bowl versus the Giants. This man passed for a total of 2 touchdowns in 3 of his Super Bowls put together. And most people don't care because most people pick their GOAT the same way a 5-year-old would. Duh, this guy has this many rings, so he's the best, duh. And he didn't play good versus the Chiefs in 2020 either. He got 3 cheap touchdowns only after Tampa Bay's top 5 defense reduced Patrick Mahomes to a non-factor, and Brady only threw for 72 air yards the whole game. You might say, but Brady has been the reason for his Super Bowl wins. He's led a game-winning drive in almost all of them. First of all, half of his game-winning drives are only game-winning drives because his kicker made the field goal. If Vinatieri would have missed those field goals, Brady's game-winning drives would be nothing. Brady did not kick those field goals either. And he also gets credit for a game-winning drive versus the Seahawks and the Falcons, when really it was Malcolm Butler who won it versus Seattle, and his running back who scored the game-winning touchdown versus Atlanta. But more to the point, for all of Brady's game-winning drives, Horry contributed to winning his rings just as much as Brady did. With the series tied 2-2, in Game 6, in overtime, San Antonio down by 2 to the Pistons, Robert Horry, with an injured shoulder, drains a 3-pointer to put the Spurs up by 1 with 5 seconds left in the game. In Game 3 of the 1995 Finals, up by 1, Robert Horry seals the game and drains a 3-pointer to put the Rockets up by 4, giving Houston a commanding 3-0 series lead. And everyone knows a 2-1 series is monstrously different from a 3-0 series. He effectively won the series for the Rockets then and there. Down 89-91 to the Portland Trail Blazers in the 2001 playoffs, Kobe Bryant, who never passes, pulls a LeBron James, passes up on taking the game-winning shot, and instead passes the ball to Robert Horry, who goes on to drain a 3-pointer and win the series for the Lakers. In the 2002 Western Conference Finals, the Lakers down 2-1 to the Kings in the series. They're down 99-97 in Game 4. Kobe Bryant drives toward the goal and misses. Shaquille O'Neal rebounds the ball and misses the putback, leaving less than a second left in the game. Kobe and Shaq both miss the game-tying shot, and then there's less than a second left. You would think this is an obvious recipe for a Lakers loss. But then the ball gets kicked out to none other than Robert Horry, who drains the three-point buzzer beater in Chris Webber's face to give Los Angeles the win, 100-99. This one is special for two reasons. First, this is a legit buzzer beater in the playoffs. And second, if Horry doesn't make this shot, the Lakers lose and their three-peat doesn't happen. And I could go on and on. I'm not concerned with any Brady fans' feelings. I deal with facts. And here, the fact of the matter is, Robert Horry and Tom Brady are both role players, system players. They are very good. They're great, in fact. They both played pivotal roles in winning some of their rings, but they have their teams to thank for most of their rings. I hear this a lot. Brady may not be the best quarterback talent-wise, but he's the greatest. To me, that's a contradiction in terms. You can't be the greatest if you're not the best. Brady can't be the GOAT when there's at least half a dozen quarterbacks more talented than him. Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, Patrick Mahomes. Hell, Favre and Tony Romo have more talent than Tom Brady. Tom Brady is an average quarterback. Without his accolades, he wouldn't be anywhere close to anyone's top 10 quarterbacks of all time lists. With his accolades, full of asterisks as they may be, I hesitantly conclude that he is a top 10 quarterback of all time, but there is no question about it. Tom Brady is not the GOAT.